This video is a revision video for the 4Parle algebra test covering expanding a bracket, factorizing a bracket, expanding and simplifying, and calculation programs. So the first thing we have here is expanding brackets. In these situations you will have a term within a bracket, normally a letter and a number added or subtracted, multiplied by something outside of the bracket, either a number or a letter. The one thing to remember with all of these is if you have something multiplying a bracket, the thing outside multiplies each of the terms inside the bracket separately. So here 8 would multiply the d and 8 would multiply the 8. So when 8 multiplies d, in this case we'll write it out in full, so we would have 8 multiplied by d, and we're going to add the 8 multiplied by the 8. 8 multiplied by 8. Now 8 multiplied by d is simplified to 8d, and 8 times 8 is 64, so it's plus 64. So we simply have 8 times d, 8d, 8 times 8, 64. With the second one on the right here, we have 10 times d and 10 times minus 3. So we would write that down. We would say we have 10 multiplied by d. This time it's minus because we have a minus sign inside the bracket here. Minus 10 multiplied by 3. So 10 times t is 10d, and minus 10 times 3 is minus 30. Another way of looking at this, if you go, well, I've got 10 times d is 10d, go straight here, 10 times minus 3, minus 30. Carrying on similarly, at the bottom here, a is going to be equal to x multiplied by 7 plus x multiplied by x. Now x multiplied by 7 is 7x. We wouldn't write x7, we always put the number in front, so that's 7x, plus an x multiplied by x is simply x squared, x to the power of 2. And finally we have minus 6z multiplied by z, and minus 6z multiplied by minus 7. So minus 6z multiplied by z, I'm going to write that first, minus 6z multiplied by z, and then I have minus 6z multiplied by minus 7. It's a bit of a mess, but let's tidy that up. Minus 6z times z, well, z times z is z squared, so I have minus 6z squared, and then I have minus times a minus, that's going to be a plus. That's the most difficult part of that. 6 times 7 is 42, and then multiply by z. Take a moment to reflect on that last one especially. Make sure you understand how you get to the minus 6z squared by multiplying these two terms, and the plus 42z by multiplying these two terms. You may not be asked just to to expand just one bracket. You may be asked to expand and simplify a couple of brackets. So the example on the left here, we have w multiplied by a bracket plus w multiplied by another bracket, and they want you to expand and simplify. So all you do is you expand them separately and then you add them together. So the first one here, we would have w times w is w squared, w times 5 is 5w, it's a positive because we've got no negative symbols there. Then we have plus w times w is w squared, and w times 7 is plus 7w. So these two multiply to make this, these two multiply to make this, these two multiply to make this, and these two multiply to make this. Now we need to simplify. That was the expanding bit. You can see we have two terms with a w squared, so that means we simply have 2w squared. And if you look at it, we have 5w plus 7w, so 5 plus 7 is 12, so we have 12w. And then the one on the right here, we have again two terms, each with a term outside, or two brackets rather, with each with a term outside. So I'm going to multiply those through, and I'm going to say 2e multiplied by 4e. 2 times 4 is 8, e times e is e squared. 2 times 3 is 6, so it's plus 6e. Then it gets a little bit tricky because what we actually have here is minus 3e. So minus 3e times e, that's going to be minus 3e squared. and then I have minus 3e times minus 5. Minus times a minus is a plus. 3 times 5 is 15, and then I have to have my e. Then if I look, I have two terms with e squared and two terms with e. So what I can now do is I can actually combine what we call similar terms. So I do 8e squared minus 3e squared is 5e squared, and 6e plus 15e is 21e. Now there is another step you can make on both of these, and that leads us into the next part, which is factorising. If I go back to the one on the left, what I can actually do now is go, well, I've got two terms, and on both of those terms I have a w, and I also have an even number. So what I could do is I could factorise. I could say, well, both share a common factor of 2w, so I can take that outside of a bracket, and then what would I need to go inside the bracket to expand to take me to 2w squared plus 12w? Well, I'd have w as the first term, because 2w times w is w squared, and then I would have plus 6 for the second term, because 2w times 6 is 12w. So some questions will ask you to expand and simplify, and will ask you to factorise at the end, some won't. The one on the right, the numbers have no common factors, but the letters do. So here, if you were factorising it now, we would say e would come outside, because that's common. I would have 5e at the front, and I would have plus 21 here. The beauty is if you can do the expanding of a bracket, you can always check a factorisation. E times 5e is 5e squared, e times 21 is 21e. So here are some more factorizations. Some of them are done in part for you. So here we have with j, we have 5y plus 25 is equal to 5 times y plus 5 times something. So if you have a question like this, you're going to be filling in the blanks. So 5 times 5 will be 25. Then we look at it and go, well, 5 is common here and here. So what this equals is 5 outside the bracket, and then the y plus 5 inside. Again, if you expand it, you get back to the start. On m, on the right hand side here, you have 2 times what is 8, 2 times 4, and minus 2 times what is minus 2y, it's y. The common thing here is the number 2, not minus 2, it's just 2. So 2 goes on the bracket outside, and then we go 4 minus y. Negatives are always a bit more tricky when you are factorising. If we can just check, 2 times 4 is 8, so that works. 2 times minus 2 is minus 2y. Then coming down here, we're going to go straight to the answers on these ones. So we're going to go, what is common in our two terms here? Well, both are 7 and 14 are multiples of 7, so 7 can come outside. Both terms have an x, so x can come outside. I'll draw my bracket in. 7x times x is 7x squared, and 7x times plus 2 is plus 14x. Finally, the one on the right, we have 15 and 40, both are multiples of 5, so 5 comes out. Z squared and z both have a factor of z, so that is also outside the bracket. Draw the bracket in. I will have 3z as my first term, because 5 times 3 is 15, z times z is z squared, and I'm going to have a minus sign here for the minus 40, 8 because 5 times 8 is 40, and then the z to give me the minus 40z. No, I don't need that. Oh, there's a little mistake. I take that out. Always worth double checking, because now I already have a z here. So 5z times minus 8 is minus 40z, and 5z times 3z is 15z squared. You may be asked to form an expression using the algebra. Here, for example, we might just want the area of the little a shape. So the area of the thing that is just called a, lowercase a. Well, that is simply length times width. The length of a is 6, and the width of a is x. It's 6 along the bottom here, and it's x going up here. So the area of a is just 6x. If they wanted the area of, say, the whole thing, a, b, c, d, then that would be the total length, which is going to be this distance here, which that is 6 plus x, multiplied by bc, which is x. So that would be 6 plus x in the bracket, and I'm going to multiply by x, but I'm going to put it in the front because that's just neater in terms of the maths. Now in D, say I wanted the area of little d, the little D rectangle here, the one that's shaded. I'm going to go, what's this length here? Well, that length is going to be x minus 4, x being the total length of our big rectangle, take away 4, and then this length is 4. So the area of the little d is going to be 4 multiplied by x minus 4. Another way of forming an expression will be from a word problem. So here it says I think of a number, I multiply a number by 5, I subtract 2, the answer is 58. Form an equation in terms of x. So that means you're going to put x into this. So that's the number that I'm thinking of. So I think of a number, x. I multiply this number by 5, multiply by 5. I subtract 2, my answer is 58, equals 58. So just tidy that up a little bit. I got 5x minus 2 equals 58. That's the answer to part A. Now part B says solve the equation to find the original number. So then I'm just going to use my equation and solve it. So I got 5x minus 2 is 58, which means that 5x is going to be equal to 58 plus 2, or another way of looking at that is 5x equals 60. And if 5x equals 60, x is going to be equal to 60 divided by 5, or x is equal to 12. Now I can check that. I could put 12 into this and say think of a number 12, multiply it by 5, 12 5s are 60, subtract 2, that gives me 58. So it's always a nice way of checking.